All right, so we're diving into some seriously hardcore nutrition strategies today, specifically stuff geared towards packing on muscle, boosting strength, and really dialing in that body fat. It's the kind of stuff, a lot of us are after.
For sure, and it can get pretty confusing out there, right?
Yeah.
All these different diets and approaches. What we're trying to do here is sift through all that and really pull out the core principles from these sources you've brought so we can get a solid understanding of what actually works.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of solid, one of the main sources here, Gerard Dante's Macrobolic Nutrition, this isn't just another fad diet book, is it? It feels like more of a deep dive into, the science of how to actually fuel your body for serious results.
Right, and what's really interesting about Dante is that he's not just some, like, armchair expert. This guy's walked the walk. His whole journey from high school football all the way to national level bodybuilding, it really highlights the power of getting your nutrition dialed in.
Okay, so to really drive that point home, we're talking about a guy who back in the mid-90s was walking around off-season at almost 290 pounds with 10% body fat.
Right.
And then for competitions, he dropped down to a shredded 250 pounds at an insane 4 or 5% body fat.
Yeah.
And apparently 250 was huge on stage back then, so clearly this guy knew a thing or two about how to manipulate his physique with food.
Oh, yeah, he was definitely ahead of the curve. And that's what makes his approach so compelling. It's like, this isn't just theory, it's tried and tested.
Yeah.
He got these crazy results himself.
So anyone listening, if you've been hitting the gym hard, super dedicated, but maybe not seeing the gains you'd hoped for, or maybe you're just getting started on your fitness journey, this deep dive is for you. We're cutting through the BS and getting to the stuff that really makes a difference.
Absolutely. And, one of the first things Dante points out is just how much bodybuilding itself has changed. Like, the guys competing today are just unbelievably huge and lean. And he actually suggests that this macrobolic approach, it can help you achieve that same level of rib conditioning without having to kill yourself with cardio. Now, that's something we'll definitely need to unpack.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll get to that. But first, one of the things Dante goes after right away is this whole low-carb craze, like the Atkins diet.
Yeah.
What's his main beef with, drastically cutting carbs, especially for athletes and people trying to build muscle?
Well, the basic idea behind these very low-carb diets is that they try to shift your body's main fuel source away from carbs and more towards fat and, to some extent, protein. So they're trying to force your body into ketosis, where it starts breaking down stored fat for energy.
Right, and that sounds appealing to a lot of people, but what's the problem with this, especially if you're all about, pushing your physical limits and building muscle?
The issue is, when you cut carbs way down, your body might start looking for alternative energy sources, and it can turn to protein for that. Through a process called gluconeogenesis, your body can actually convert protein into glucose in the liver. And for athletes, the problem is your body doesn't care if that protein comes from your diet or from your existing muscle tissue.
Wait, so the protein I'm eating or even the muscle I've already built could be getting burned for fuel if my carbs are too low. That seems kind of counterproductive if I'm trying to gain size,
Exactly. And there's actually research from the U.S. Olympic Committee that backs this up. They found that when athletes got less than 42% of their calories from carbs, it actually messed with their performance and their energy levels.
Less than 42%. That really shows you how vital carbs are, especially if you're training hard. Now, the book also talks about glycogen. How does this low-carb thing affect our glycogen stores, which, from what I understand, are pretty crucial for performance?
Right. So glycogen is basically how your body stores carbohydrates, mainly in your muscles. It's like your readily available energy source, especially during high-intensity stuff. And when you severely restrict carbs, those glycogen stores get depleted. And as we just talked about, that can lead to your body breaking down protein to make glucose, which is definitely not what you want if you're trying to build muscle.
And the book mentions that this process, gluconeogenesis, it's actually less efficient than just using carbs for fuel in the first place. So not only are you potentially losing muscle, but you're probably not performing at your best either.
You got it. And there's even a visual difference. Like, glycogen in your muscles helps them look full and hard, that defined look. When glycogen is low, your muscles can look flat and soft, which is the opposite of what most bodybuilders want. And we see this a lot in testimonials and stuff, guys saying they look and feel depleted before competitions when they go too low carb.
So it's like shooting yourself in the foot, really. You're trying to build muscle, get stronger, and stay lean, but cutting out carbs like Atkins suggests could actually work against all of that.
Pretty much. Macrobolic nutrition makes a really compelling argument that carbs are way too important for athletes, especially those focused on size and strength, to be restricted to that degree.
Okay, so no crazy carb cutting. So let's dig into why carbs are so important in this philosophy. What exactly is glycogen and why is it so key for our goals here?
So glycogen, it's basically like this long chain of glucose molecules linked together. It's how your body stores carbs for later use. You have some stored in your brain and liver, about 60 grams in the liver, usually. But the majority, like around 300 grams for most people, is stored in your muscles. And this is important for you. The more muscle you build, the more glycogen you can store. It's like having a bigger fuel tank.
Which makes sense, right? More muscle, more fuel needed. So what exactly does this muscle glycogen do? What's its main job?
It has two main functions. First, it's your main energy source during those tough workouts.
Oh.
When you're lifting heavy or doing high-intensity stuff, your muscles use glycogen for fuel. Second, it helps keep your blood sugar stable when you're training for a longer time. And, like we discussed, having enough muscle glycogen helps prevent your body from breaking down muscle protein for glucose.
So it protects your muscles from being cannibalized for energy.
Got it. And the book mentions that, like, a bigger athlete, say someone around 250 pounds, they're going to have way more glycogen storage capacity, so they'll need more carbs and overall calories than a smaller guy, like around 160 pounds.
Exactly. More muscle, higher energy demands, and a greater ability to use and store those carbs as glycogen.
Makes sense. All right, so no crazy carb cutting, but carbs are still essential. Now, let's get to the heart of this macrobolic nutrition thing, the 4-5-3-5-20 lean mass equation. Break this down for us. What does this ratio actually look like in terms of your daily food intake? Okay, so the foundation of macrobolic nutrition is this precise ratio for your calories. 45% from low glycemic carbohydrates, 35% from protein, and the remaining 20% from fats.
Okay, so 45 carbs, 35 protein, 20 fat. So it's not super low carb, but it's also not a crazy high carb diet. It's a pretty solid chunk of protein, though. What's the reasoning behind these percentages?
The idea is to give you enough carbs to fuel your workouts and replenish your glycogen, but without causing huge spikes in insulin that can lead to fat storage. The 35% protein, that's to provide all the building blocks your body needs to repair and build muscle. And the 20% fat, that's for essential fatty acids, hormone production, and overall health.
And the book talks about how this plan is good for insulin sensitivity and metabolic health, right? Like, how does that work?
Right, so macrobolic nutrition is big on eating frequently throughout the day, like every 2.5 to 3 hours, and making sure each meal follows this 4-5-3-5-20 ratio. This, combined with eating high-fiber carbs and exercising regularly, is supposed to be really good for improving and maintaining your insulin sensitivity. So you avoid those big blood sugar swings, and that can help prevent insulin resistance and just generally keep your metabolism running smoothly.
So it's not just about performance, but also about long-term health and sustainability.
Exactly. It's about setting yourself up for success, both in the gym and in life.
Okay, cool. So let's zoom in on protein for a bit, since that's a pretty big chunk of this macrobolic ratio. What are the most important things protein does in the body, especially for someone who's looking to build muscle and get stronger?
So protein is absolutely crucial for repairing and building muscle tissue. When you lift weights, you actually create tiny tears in your muscle fibers. And protein provides the amino acids, the building blocks that your body needs to patch those up and make them bigger and stronger. But protein does more than just build muscle. It's also really important for things like brain function, hormone production, all sorts of stuff.
And the book really stresses having protein available, especially right after you train. Why is that so important?
Well, the actual muscle growth doesn't happen during your workout. It happens afterwards during recovery. So you need those amino acids readily available to fuel that repair and growth process. It's like giving your body the raw materials right when it needs them.
Makes perfect sense. The book also talks about eating a variety of protein sources. What's the benefit of that?
So different protein sources have different amino acid profiles, meaning they have different amounts and combinations of specific amino acids. And some of these, the essential amino acids, your body can't make on its own. So by eating a variety of protein, you're making sure you're getting all of them in the right amounts.
So we're talking about those essential amino acids again. Why are they so important, especially for building new muscle?
Essential amino acids are like the VIPs of muscle building. Your body can't make them, so you have to get them from food. And they're absolutely crucial for stimulating muscle protein synthesis, which is basically the process of building new muscle tissue. Animal proteins are generally the best for this. They contain all the essential amino acids in the right proportions. Plant proteins can be good too, but they're often missing some of those essential amino acids, or they don't have them in the right amounts. So you have to be a bit more strategic with those.
Okay, so variety is key, and animal proteins seem to be the stars of the show. Now, the book talks about these critical 5 amino acids for athletes. What are those, and what makes them so special?
So the critical 5 that Dante highlights are glutamine, arginine, leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And the reason they're so important for people who train hard is because they get used up really quickly during exercise. Plus, they're involved in tons of different processes that help your muscles function and recover.
Okay, let's break those down a bit. Starting with glutamine, it seems like that one's kind of a rock star in the book. What makes it so important?
Glutamine is actually the most abundant amino acid in your muscles. And when you lift heavy weights, your body goes through a lot of it. Now, intense exercise also releases cortisol, which is a hormone that can actually break down muscle tissue. And glutamine has been shown to help counteract that. So after a tough workout, taking glutamine can help shift your body into a more anabolic state, which is basically like a muscle building state.
So it helps protect your muscles from the breakdown that can happen when you train hard. What else does glutamine do?
It also plays a huge role in boosting your immune system. When you train hard, you produce a lot of free radicals, which are these unstable molecules that can damage your cells and weaken your immune system. Glutamine helps fight those off by increasing levels of glutathione, which is a powerful antioxidant. Plus, it helps protect your body from ammonia buildup, which can happen when you exercise a lot.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And the book mentions something about glutamine being a cell volumizer. What does that even mean?
So what that means is glutamine helps pull water and nutrients into your muscle cells. This includes things like other amino acids, vitamins, minerals, even glycogen, which is stored carbohydrates. And this extra hydration and nutrient availability makes your muscles look bigger and fuller. Plus, it gives your muscles the fuel and building blocks they need to grow and recover properly.
So it's like making your muscle cells more anabolic from the inside out. And it also helps with hormones, right?
Right. All that extra hydration from glutamine can actually make your muscle cells more sensitive to anabolic hormones like insulin and testosterone. So they respond better to those muscle building signals.
And one of the most interesting things, the book says that glutamine can actually boost growth hormone levels.
Yeah, there's been a lot of research on that. Some older studies needed pretty high doses to see an effect. But one study mentioned in the book, they found that just 2.5 grams of effervescent glutamine led to a 30% increase in growth hormone. And growth hormone can definitely help with muscle growth and fat loss.
So glutamine is kind of a big deal. But the book also makes a point that it's even more important if you're not getting enough carbs and protein overall. Why is that?
Well, if you're not getting enough carbs and protein from your diet, your body can actually start using glutamine for energy. Remember that gluconeogenesis process we talked about? It can use glutamine to make glucose, just like it can with muscle protein. And if you're not replenishing your glutamine stores properly, that can lead to muscle breakdown and a catabolic state, which is the opposite of what you want.
So glutamine's great, but it works best as part of a solid nutritional plan, like what Macrobolic nutrition lays out.
Exactly. It's all about synergy.
Okay, so let's talk about where we get our protein from. The book talks about both whole food and protein supplements. What's the overall philosophy there?
Macrobolic nutrition is all about incorporating both. Whole foods are obviously super important for overall health and getting all the nutrients you need, but the right supplements can really help you hit those high protein targets when you're training intensely. So it's about finding that balance.
What are some of the top whole food protein sources the book recommends?
It emphasizes things like lean red meat, like beef, chicken and turkey breast, fish, whole eggs, and even some low-fat dairy. These provide a good amount of protein, all the essential amino acids, and a bunch of other important nutrients.
And we talked about this earlier, but there seems to be a preference for animal protein over plant protein in this plan. Why is that?
It mainly comes down to the amino acids. Animal proteins are considered complete proteins because they have all the essential amino acids in the right amounts. Plant proteins can be good, but you often have to combine them to get all the essentials.
Okay, so variety, especially with animal proteins, seems to be key. Now, when we eat protein, it doesn't just magically turn into muscle. The book gives a little overview of how protein digestion works. What's happening there?
Right, so digestion starts in your mouth with chewing, then it goes down to your stomach, where acid and enzymes start breaking it down. From there, it goes into your small intestine, where it's broken down even further into individual amino acids. Then those amino acids are absorbed into your bloodstream and transported to your muscles and other tissues.
And the book mentions that how fast protein leaves your stomach can actually vary depending on what else you're eating. What affects that?
The fat content is a big factor. High-fat meals digest slower, so they'll stay in your stomach longer. Liquid meals, like protein shakes, tend to empty faster because they're usually lower in fat. And fiber can also slow things down, which can be good because it gives your body more time to absorb nutrients.
So a slower, more gradual release of nutrients can be beneficial. Now let's get specific about some protein sources. The book goes into quite a bit of detail about both whole foods and supplements. Let's start with beef. What are the key highlights there?
So beef is considered a big mass protein source, which is why bodybuilders love it. It's naturally high in creatine and L-carnitine, both of which can help with muscle growth and cardiovascular health. It also provides zinc, phosphorus, vitamin B12, and a bunch of other nutrients. The book actually has a whole table showing the nutritional content of different cuts of beef.
And what about chicken breast? That's like a staple for a lot of people trying to up their protein. What makes it a good choice here?
Chicken breast is great because it's super lean and has a really high protein-to-fat ratio. It's also a good source of potassium, which is an important mineral. And because it's so lean, you can easily add healthy fats to your meals like olive oil or avocado.
What about eggs? The book is all about keeping those yolks. What's the deal with whole eggs?
Whole eggs are like the gold standard for food-based protein. They have a perfect biological value of 100, which means their amino acids are really well utilized by the body. They're packed with omega-3 fatty acids, which are great for your heart, your joints, and your hormones. They're also high in BCAAs and have a perfect score on the PDCAA, which is a measure of protein quality. The book actually says whole eggs are their top choice for protein.
So yeah, don't toss those yolks. Fish is another popular choice. How does that fit in?
Fish is a good source of protein, and it digests at a medium pace, somewhere between whey protein and red meat. And some types of fish, like salmon, are rich in omega-3s, which can actually help with fat loss.
And what about pork? Is that okay to eat on this plan?
Yeah, especially lean cuts like pork tenderloin. It's another good source of protein, zinc, iron, and B vitamins, and it has a pretty low fat content if you trim off the visible fat. But they specifically say to stick with tenderloin and avoid things like bacon and sausage.
Okay, so lots of options for lean protein from whole foods. Now let's talk about protein supplements. Whey protein is super popular. What's the take on that?
They definitely don't recommend relying solely on whey, but they do acknowledge that it has its benefits. It's super fast digesting, which makes it great for post-workout recovery, and it's really high in those essential amino acids we talked about. But because it digests so quickly, it doesn't provide a sustained release of amino acids, so they recommend using it strategically in combination with slower digesting protein sources.
What about soy protein? It seems like there's a lot of debate about that one.
They actually specifically recommend Supro soy protein isolate. It's the only plant-based protein powder that has a biological value of 100. And they point to research showing that soy protein can help lower cholesterol and triglyceride levels, which is good for your heart. Plus, it's high in glutamine, arginine, BCAAs, and it's a good source of antioxidants.
Wow, that's a pretty strong endorsement for soy. The book also talks about probolic protein. What's special about that one?
Probolic is a blend of whey, soy, and casein proteins, so you're getting a combination of fast, medium, and slow digesting proteins. That means it provides a steady stream of amino acids for several hours, which is great for preventing muscle breakdown. They recommend it before bed to help with muscle recovery and growth overnight, and also before workouts to provide sustained energy and amino acids during your training.
So it's like a time-released protein. Sounds pretty cool. All right, let's get practical here. How much protein does the Macrobolic plan actually recommend per day?
They recommend 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight.
That's a lot of protein. How do you even eat that much?
They recommend eating 5 to 7 meals per day, spaced out every few hours. And ideally, you're getting a mix of whole food protein and protein supplements throughout the day. This helps maximize protein synthesis and keeps your body in an anabolic state.
And they emphasize the timing of those protein supplements too, right?
Right. The key times are in the morning, right after your workout, and before bed. In the morning and post-workout, you want to blend like Probolic for both fast and sustained release. And before bed, they recommend something similar, about 0.25 grams per pound of body weight. So for a 200-pound guy, that'd be about 50 grams of protein before bed.
So the idea is to have a constant supply of amino acids available to your muscles throughout the day and night.
Exactly. 247 muscle building.
Okay, so we've covered carbs, protein. Now let's tackle the last piece of the puzzle, dietary fats. What's the macrobolic take on fats?
Well, they start by explaining the different types of fats: saturated, unsaturated, cis, trans, all that. And they're pretty clear about trans fats being bad news. They can mess with your cell membranes, your metabolism, and even inhibit muscle growth. So minimizing those is a big priority.
So trans fats are out. What about unsaturated fats?
Unsaturated fats are good. Monounsaturated fats like olive oil and nuts are linked to a lower risk of heart disease and cancer. And some studies suggest they might even help with weight loss. Polyunsaturated fats, which include omega-3s and omega-6s, are also beneficial. Omega-3s, which you get from things like fish oil and fatty fish, have anti-inflammatory effects and are important for hormone-like substances called eicosanoids, which can help with muscle growth and recovery.
So it's all about making smart choices when it comes to fats. Now, one thing that often gets overlooked in nutrition, even though it's super important, is water. What's the macrobolic view on hydration?
They call water a nutritional paradox because it doesn't have any calories or nutrients, but it's absolutely essential for everything your body does. Even being slightly dehydrated can hurt your performance in the gym. Water is involved in every metabolic process, including muscle building and energy production, so staying hydrated is non-negotiable.
Noted. Now, we've talked about the individual micronutrients in water. What happens when we put it all together, like in a 4-5-3-5-20 macrobolic meal? How does our body actually process and use all that stuff?
So digestion starts in the mouth, then it goes to the stomach where protein gets broken down a bit, then it moves to the small intestine where most of the nutrient absorption happens. The speed of this whole process can vary depending on what's in the meal. Fats slow things down, liquids empty faster, and fiber can also affect the rate of digestion. And in the small intestine, fats are broken down into fatty acids, proteins are broken down into amino acids, and carbs are broken down into glucose. And the book emphasizes that the 4-5-3-5-20 ratio in macrobolic meals is designed to optimize all of this. It helps ensure a smooth and efficient digestion process so you're getting the most out of your nutrients and avoiding any kind of digestive upset.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, remember how we talked about that whole idea of getting ripped without cardio? Let's circle back to that. What's the macrobolic take on cardio for muscle growth and fat loss?
They're pretty straightforward about it. Cardio doesn't do anything for muscle growth. In fact, it can even work against you if you're not careful. Their argument is that by optimizing your nutrition through this 4-5-3-5-20 ratio and using the right supplements, you can create an environment in your body that burns fat while preserving and even building muscle. So in theory, you could minimize or even eliminate traditional cardio and still get shredded.
That's definitely going to appeal to some people. But to put all of this into action, we need to know how to figure out our individual calorie needs, right?
Right. So the book starts with basal metabolic rate, or BMR, which is basically the number of calories your body burns at rest just to keep you alive. Then they add in calories for your daily activities like your job and any movement you do outside of exercise. And then they factor in the calories you burn during your workouts. All of that gives you an estimate of your total daily calorie needs.
And they mentioned that macrobolic nutrition can actually increase your BMR. How does that work?
The idea is that by eating the right balance of macros, eating whole foods, and eating frequently, you actually boost your metabolism. So your body burns more calories even at rest.
So it's not just about eating less, it's about making your body a better calorie-burning machine. And how do they recommend adjusting those calories based on your goals, like if you want to gain muscle, maintain, or lose fat?
They provide these multipliers that you apply to your metabolic growth variable, which is calculated based on your weight and activity level. For people who want to gain both muscle and some fat, the multiplier is 13. For maintaining, it's 10. And for losing fat while gaining or maintaining muscle, it's 7. Or 6 if you have a higher body fat percentage.
So you can really personalize it based on what you're trying to achieve. What about estimating the calories you burn during workouts?
They have a pretty simple method for that. For weight training and low-impact cardio, you multiply the minutes you work out by 10. For high-impact cardio, you multiply by 12. You add all that together to get your total exercise calorie burn.
And once you have your total calorie needs figured out, how do you break that down into meals?
You basically divide your total calories and macros for the day by the number of meals you're eating. But the book also has these detailed calorie requirement tables that factor in all your individual info and make it super easy to figure everything out.
So it's a very personalized system. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about micronutrients, those vitamins and minerals. What's their role in all of this?
Micronutrients don't provide calories, but they're essential for tons of processes in your body that affect your energy, recovery, and muscle growth. The book talks about water-soluble vitamins like the B vitamins and vitamin C, and fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. Water-soluble vitamins are generally excreted in your urine, but you still need to get enough of them. The B vitamins are really important for energy production, and vitamin C is crucial for things like collagen production and hormone synthesis.
And what about those fat-soluble vitamins?
Fat-soluble vitamins are stored in your body, so you don't need to eat them as often, but they're still super important. Vitamin A is good for your vision, immune system, and cell growth. Vitamin D is crucial for bone health, immunity, and even muscle function. Vitamin E is a powerful antioxidant that protects your cells from damage. And vitamin K is important for blood clotting. The book recommends getting these from a balanced diet.
And then there are the minerals. They're also categorized based on how much we need, right?
Yeah. Macrominerals are the ones we need in larger amounts, like sodium, chloride, potassium, magnesium, phosphorus, and calcium. These are important for things like fluid balance, nerve function, muscle contraction, and bone health. Then there are the trace minerals, which we need in smaller amounts, like iron, zinc, selenium, and others. These are involved in all sorts of enzymatic reactions and are crucial for things like oxygen transport, immune function, and protein synthesis. The book stresses getting these from food as much as possible and avoiding excessive supplementation.
So a well-rounded diet is key. Now, the book also talks about how supplements can take your results to the next level. What are some of the key supplements they highlight?
They talk about a lot of different supplements, but some of the key ones are creatine, glutamine, testosterone boosters, growth hormone enhancers, joint support formulas, and even meal replacements.
Let's start with creatine. That one's pretty popular, but what does the research say?
Creatine is one of the most researched supplements out there, and there's tons of evidence showing it can increase muscle size and strength. It basically helps your muscles produce more energy during intense activity, which leads to more growth. The book mentions MHP's TRAC, which is a time-released creatine supplement that also includes arginine.
And what about glutamine? We already talked about how important that is, but what about supplementing with it?
They recommend MHP's effervescent glutamine. It's formulated with bicarbonate to help with absorption.
What about testosterone boosters? Those seem to be everywhere these days.
They mention two products, TB-OMB and TB-MUMB. TB-ME1 testosterone product and TB-MUMB is a pro-hormone-free formula that's designed to naturally increase testosterone production. They do emphasize that these are for men over 18 only and that you should consult with a doctor before using them.
Growth hormone enhancers are another interesting category. What's the deal with those?
So growth hormone declines as we age, and that can lead to muscle loss, fat gain, and all sorts of other problems. The book talks about how certain amino acids can naturally boost growth hormone production. And they recommend a product called Secretagogue 1, which is a blend of amino acids designed to do just that.
And joint support is obviously important for anyone who trains hard. What do they recommend for that?
They talk about isoxagen, which is a COX-2 inhibitor, and glucosamine sulfate, which is a building block for cartilage and other connective tissues. Both of these can help reduce joint pain and inflammation and support long-term joint health.
What about meal replacements? Are those okay to use?
They actually recommend Up Your Math as meal replacements, which are formulated based on the 4-5-3-5-20 ratio. They mention the host using these between meals and before workouts. And they also have Up Your Math as nutrition bars, which are a convenient option for on the go.
And lastly, they talk about fat loss supplements, right?
Right. They mention things like Dermagenics and ephedra. Dermagenics basically help your body burn more calories, and ephedra is a stimulant that can increase metabolism and fat burning. The host talks about his personal experience with ephedra and believes it can be effective when used responsibly.
Okay, so they're big on using supplements strategically as part of a comprehensive plan. And to help with all this, the book includes a bunch of sample macrobolic meals. Can you walk us through a few examples?
Sure. One example is an egg white omelet with veggies and low-fat cheese served with their macrobolic granola and skim milk. Another is their macrobolic granola mix, which has egg whites, granola, non-fat yogurt, and Up Your Mass protein powder. They also have a macrobolic morning mix with oatmeal, cottage cheese, apple, flaxseed, and skim milk. For lunch or dinner, they have options like whole wheat spaghetti with chicken and veggies, a grilled chicken and bean salad, a lean beef burger on a whole wheat bun, a steak pita pocket, a tuna melt on pumpernickel bread, lemon salmon with spinach and potato, and even some sushi rolls. They provide a detailed nutritional breakdown for each of these meals, showing how they fit into the 4-5-3-44 ratio.
So they give you a lot of ideas for putting this into practice, and they also have those low glycemic food lists, right, to help with carb choices.
Yeah. They have lists for low glycemic veggies, beans, fruits, and grains. For example, for veggies, they recommend things like carrots, sweet potatoes, white potatoes, yams, and russet potatoes. For beans, they have options like lentils, black beans, kidney beans, and chickpeas. For fruits, they list apples, grapefruit, peaches, grapes, pears, kiwi, pineapple, and berries. And for grains, they recommend things like brown rice, quinoa, oatmeal, and whole wheat bread.
So those lists can really help you make smart choices when it comes to carbs. All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the absolute key takeaways from macrobolic nutrition?
The core concept is this 4-5-3-5-20 ratio: 45% of your calories from low glycemic carbs, 35% from protein, and 20% from healthy fats. They emphasize eating frequently throughout the day, getting enough protein, and making sure you're getting all your essential amino acids, especially from animal sources.
And they really drive home the importance of understanding glycogen and why those super low-carb diets can be problematic for building muscle. They also highlight the role of specific supplements like glutamine, creatine, and those hormonal support products in maximizing your results.
Absolutely. It's about using all the tools available to create the ideal environment for muscle growth, fat loss, and optimal performance.
And one final thought for our listeners, thinking about all the info we've covered today, what's one small change you can make to your next meal, maybe just one swap or addition that aligns with these macrobolic principles? Something you can do right now to start fueling your body more effectively.